Welcome to the Praxis, the podcast where we are connecting theory and practice to achieve health justice. I'm your host, Edwin Lindo, and this is our special edition and series, COVID-19 Community Conversations, where we'll speak with community members from across the country here in Seattle, and they'll share with us how they're managing and surviving through this pandemic. Thank you for joining us, and if you haven't, please make sure to listen to our previous episodes. All right. For those that are watching, I want to thank you again for joining us. This is the Praxis podcast through our live streaming, where we're doing community conversations around COVID-19, how folks are affected by it, how they're managing through it, and just what it means to be living through this time. And so we have a special guest and a friend, Kaleb. And I don't know, Kaleb, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Kaleb Germinaro. I'm a PhD student at UW in education, and I am also working at an education nonprofit down in Southeast Seattle called Southeast Seattle Education Coalition, and got to meet you through that. So that's been pretty cool to keep that relationship going.
Yeah, and can you tell us a bit more about how this is affecting you, your community, your family?
Yeah, so personally, actually I'll start with my family. My family's in good health, which is good. Most of them are back in Arizona, so they're just now getting kind of the stuff that we've had up here in Seattle. So they're probably a couple weeks behind as far as getting things on order. Like they just closed their schools for the rest of the school year today.
Can you repeat that? It broke up a bit.
Oh yeah. For my family, Arizona is a little bit behind as far as just the timing of COVID and how it's moving. But they just closed their schools for the rest of the school year today.
Okay.
Yeah. But family's good. And then I'm up here. I'm immune compromised. So my immune system's pretty suppressed at the moment because some of the medication I'm taking right now for my MS. And so I guess I'm high risk at this point. But
yeah, what does that mean for you? I mean, just living through this particular time, and I mean, emotionally or physically, I think it's already stressful being immunocompromised before a huge pandemic of a respiratory disease like COVID-19. But what does it mean, and how are you feeling?
Yeah, I think I've been pretty anxious. I think just going from a place where I'm the sole person responsible for my health, and going to my doctor's offices, making sure that I'm taking medication, and doing those things, to having to depend on everyone else and having to rely on them to care, I think has been pretty stressful for me throughout this process, just because it is also an invisible disability and disease. So not presenting a certain way, I think, adds its own complications. And so just relying on people and having to switch a mindset to be all right, I hope that to just trust naturally, I suppose, or maybe be more wary. I guess it depends, but there's definitely a shift in my thinking for sure.
Yeah, can you speak to some folks that probably on the younger side, you've seen a lot of those pictures of people at the beaches during spring break and out hanging out like it's a regular Saturday, and perhaps not realizing the significance of what it means that if someone who is immunocompromised or not has a detrimental effect because of it, it could cause serious harm and damage.
Yeah. I think...
What would you say to them?
I mean, just protect everybody at all costs at this point. Memories are not going to be... You're not going to remember, the going to the park at this point. You're going to remember if people end up passing away, right, or getting sick. Or being potentially being responsible for someone getting sick. And I mean, I don't want that burden, and I don't want to put anyone in that situation where they'll feel uncomfortable or potentially getting them sick. So I would hope that people would not want to do that as well. I think it's like this is the time to relax, and I think like people's response to like a macro level trauma event is also to like try and find things to do and like get back to things that like bring them joy, which in Seattle it's like sunny right now, so it's really hard to not be outside and like at the park, which I would love to go to the park and like be there with friends, but I can't for fear of my life. So
Yeah, no, that's real. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
What issues around equity have you been thinking about,
Mhm.
pertaining to yourself, pertaining to the students that you teach, the students
Yeah.
that you coach? Maybe you can tell folks more about that, your coaching,
Yeah.
and what that means to you, and maybe what you've heard from students during this time.
Yeah. So I coach high school football at Ballard High School up in Ballard, and then teach a class at UW. And as far as like the equity issues go, I think the greatest ones I've seen is really around like one, access to education and like online learning, and then food and food insecurities.
Yeah, can you tell folks about the effects this is having on your students? Maybe just start from the beginning, like what you do, and then the effects it may be having on your students.
Yeah, so coach high school football at Ballard High School, teach a class at UW. Oh, sorry, my dog now is very much intrigued because I'm closer to her. But and a lot of my work's around I guess like healing pedagogy and healing justice, and how the role of healing in education. But a lot of the inequities that I've seen so far in like schools is centered around food and food insecurities, and then access to online learning platforms and access to Wi-Fi, and then making sure that parents are also supported in this, and like the whole like collective family is supported in this, because a lot of people are losing their jobs or are having to go to work and can't be home to support students being at home. And it's been a beautiful thing to see a lot of people organizing around this, especially in the education space, and being there for the kids. I think is unique to certain, or not just unique to Seattle, but something that I think Seattle does a good job of, is supporting the students, in at least during this time. And I was on a call yesterday with a bunch of the coaching staff and then a bunch of our players, and it was pretty funny. They were all playing video games together while also on the Zoom call. So, but it was good to check in with them and see how they're doing, and figuring out ways that we can support them, which might be like getting a video game, console, and like making an account to play with them. Just little things to support them and during this time, because it's pretty chaotic for a lot of people too, and so just like that, access to coping mechanisms too, I think is there during this process, because people haven't had time to figure out how to process quite yet.
Yeah. Well, and let's quickly talk about that, because I think that the truth is that depending on the resources of a school, the access to these things may be significantly different, right? Where in Seattle, the North End, the schools in the North End tend to get a lot more resources, and for a number of the reasons that we've talked about before, which is the history of redlining, the history of allocation of funds, of taxpayer money based on real estate tax, and the more affluent communities are here in the North End. But I'm like, have they spoken to you, the students, about like, what effect this has on them?
Yeah, I think a number of them are still working, because they work at like food places that are still open and doing takeout. So a number of our students are like working and have just, and especially the older students, have just gone straight to work, like straight to like, because they're graduating, but they're not in school. So they're just trying to make money now to either help their families or support themselves in this time too. And I think the hardest part has been like their just the experience of being a senior and trying to figure things out, and then having like layering on top, this whole thing where like them they don't know, there's not like communication about like, oh, is college going to be the same next year, or is these things are a bunch of these things going to be the same come fall, and so I think there's a bit of uncertainty, but I know a lot of our students or our players are still working and trying to find stuff to do. I think they're hitting a board point, as probably a lot of kids are. We're like, okay, well, what now? Because they're so used to having a routine.
Yeah, no, that's right. And how is this affecting you're pursuing your PhD? It's a lot of work, a lot of effort. I mean, how is this affecting all of that? I'm assuming you may be teaching some courses.
Yeah.
Taking courses.
Yeah. I think the flipping. So last quarter was the first time I taught like a full like 50-person class co-teaching, and first time teaching the class, and then now we're flipping it to go online, which is difficult to do for somebody who's like just at the beginning of their teaching career, and I think that's been very challenging while also working and trying to support the families that CSEC supports and our partners and stuff, and just kind of like crash coursing and like going full head of steam to support everybody during this time too. So I haven't really had like a spring break or anything, or a break from school, and just been kind of working all the way through. So it's been challenging at times.
Yeah, can you speak about, I know you mentioned your health and being immunocompromised, but can you also share with folks perhaps the fear of coverage if you were to contract COVID-19? I mean, I don't know your insurance coverage situation, but I mean, is that a concern?
I'm very fortunate that I'm younger and still and a student, so I'm still on my mom's insurance.
Okay.
He works for a company that has a really strong union, and so she has really good insurance, and I'm fortunate to be on it for the next year. And if I wasn't on it, then being a student and working at the UW provides pretty good insurance too. But I think it's a very valid concern in a lot of places, right? And just hearing stories of people who are having like fears of going to the doctor because, and they're showing symptoms because of fear of bills, right? Which shouldn't be the case when you're dealing with a pandemic, and quite a lot of people are being affected because of lack of transparency and lack of honesty, and people dragging their feet, right? So I'm in a very privileged position to also say that and not experience it regularly, but it's definitely something that I'm thinking about, especially for some of my students at UW. Not all of them have insurance. Like, they're not required to have insurance to be a student. So keeping that in mind during this time too, as we move into the next quarter.
Yeah, that's real. Thank you for sharing. I don't think I have any other questions. I just appreciate you jumping on, letting us have a conversation. I'm trying to get as many folks as possible to share their stories. So for those that are watching or listening, please feel free to reach out. We can Zoom. We just want everyday folks. We want everyone to share what this experience is like. One, to create camaraderie, to build support, even changing the language around social distancing, because the truth is we need physical distancing, but socially we should be continuing to support each other, to engage in conversations with each other, similar to what we do at Estelita's library, right? Bringing folks together to think, talk, discuss. So if folks want to join, drop us a comment or a message and we'll get you on. Kaleb, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Continue the work. And like I've told a lot of folks, if you need anything, please let me know, and happy to support. Yeah.
Hope folks keep getting back to their healing practices right now. All the art and all the self reflection and all that kind of stuff right now. It's really important. So.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Praxis. This is our special edition series, community conversations around the equity issues of COVID-19. Please remember to subscribe, share, contribute, give us some ideas, and if you'd like to join us, send me a message.